Welcome back here to the Jordy Culotta Show, as we will be a quick session this morning. We got to get out of here for an 8 o'clock meeting, so we will be back with you throughout the day and have some content for you. We're going to talk New Orleans Saints with Nick Underhill. At some point today, we'll have a social media post just kind of giving you an alert that it'll be coming out, but you can always find it on our YouTube station. You can always find it on our Facebook page, anywhere that you check out the Jordy Culotta Show, jordyculottashow.com. As you know, we always weekly link up with Brody Miller, who's over at the Athletic, and he covers LSU, does a phenomenal job, but he has brought some insight to this John Emery situation that seems to be the storyline this week, hovering over the LSU football program. We'll hear from Ed Ogeron tonight over at his radio show over at TJ Ribs, but it looks like the latest from John Emery is that he has hired an attorney in Don Jackson out of Alabama. This is the same attorney that Christian Fulton retained a couple of years back to regain his eligibility at LSU while he was suspended for totally different reasons. We bring in Brody Miller to the conversation this morning from The Athletic. It is good to talk to you as always. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, man. How's it going? Never a dull moment on this good old beat.
Never a dull moment. We were just kind of talking about that coming in and in our opening segment here, how it has just been amazing to be on the LSU beat for the last year, because every time you look up, it's something new. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, even on like the slow years, like
Yes.
2018 or something, there's still just nonsense happening every 2 weeks. There's really nothing like it.
What do you make of the latest? What do you make of this John Emery situation after you had a very in-depth conversation with his attorney, Don Jackson?
I think it's something where it's clear something might have been, messed up, might be a stretch, but there's clearly some issue with the waiver application that, I think LSU thought that was going to be a pretty easy, deal right before the season. And obviously, I think you said in your show yesterday, like, none of this was news to LSU that he was dealing with this fight, but I think they did think they had this waiver situation figured out until briefly before the game. And I think it was a surprise. And I think, his attorney, Don Jackson's case is that, and again, we'll get more to the overall situation, but John Emery did have quite a bit of hardship in 2020, and this is not me having my own opinion on, what happened in his fall credits in 2020, why he was behind. I mean, that's not for me to say, but his case is more that he had quite a bit of hardship in 2020, and quite frankly, there are a lot of players who do get these, COVID waivers or hardship waivers that I think they're arguing for far less hardship, for lack of a better term, than John Emery actually has. Now, Jackson even said on the record, he's like, I have had many clients with far less mitigating circumstances than Emery get reinstated. So I think he does have optimism that he can get him back, whether it be next week or sometime after that. But we'll see, because these are just really tricky situations.
Yes, as Don Jackson told you, it's damn near immoral to punish a young man who is going through the difficulty he has gone through over the past 18 months. What did you learn about Emery and some of the things that he's been going on off the field?
Yeah, so obviously, he did fall quite far behind after fall 2020. And, as we said, he had a lot going on with his life, with his stepfather very, very ill for most of the year, his grandmother dying, his mother got sick, all those things. And on top of, I think, what we've learned, most student athletes having a pretty tough time during the pandemic. So that is out of their defense. And what ended up, what at least Jackson is saying, I can't really confirm most of these things because LSU is not going to divulge, student records. But from what Jackson is saying, Emery actually had a strong academic summer this summer to make it up, but he fell 3 credit hours short because basically there is a limitation on how many credit hours, there's a limit on what all students can take, per semester. And I think student athletes might have even other limitations. I'm not too sure on that, but yeah, so there was a limitation, and his argument is the only reason he fell 3 credit hours short were rules outside of his control, and they will be arguing that. Now, what they'll be doing is they'll be filing for what they consider, they basically will be submitting new information, which is further explaining his hardship, and hoping for what they call a reconsideration. And what makes it kind of interesting to me is that what they're doing right now is not technically an appeal. They are sending it to the NCAA staff to then have them make a decision on their own, and then if they deny it again, then they can appeal. So it's almost an interesting, I don't want to call it a loophole, but kind of an interesting thing where it's actually creating a situation where they can then appeal again to an appeal committee. So, Jackson remains pretty optimistic, and some people in the LSU camp also remain optimistic. They can turn this around, but we'll see.
Do you think that you see Trey Bradford on Saturday night?
Yeah, You know, I haven't heard much about how he's looked necessarily, so I won't lie to you there. But I know John did say yesterday he thinks he'll be eligible and available to play. And, yeah, I mean, I think you know as well as I, the run game is a little stale right now. And Ty Davis-Price, somebody who has been a productive player for going on 3 years now, you know, it's just maybe you know, he's averaging, I think, 3.19 yards a carry, and it's not exactly opening things up when you have an offense. And of course, you and I both will be the first to say offensive line is not creating much for any of the running backs right now. So I think there is an argument you could make that when you're in that situation, you need to get a running back in there who is more of a creator and a playmaker than the guy who's trying to, you know, do his job perfectly and all that. And, you know, so I think there's an argument that I think you'll really see them turn to those freshmen more and more as the season goes on. Armani Goodwin and Corey Kiner. Armani Goodwin might not play this week. So it does really open things up for Trey Bradford. And again, I don't know exactly where Trey Bradford's at with how he's been his 2 weeks back at practice, all that stuff, but he definitely does kind of fit that mold of a speedy playmaker who might be able to create more. So if he's ready, I think they'll be really inclined to play him more.
Yeah, hated that for Goodwin. It looked like he was ready to pop there after that toss on that early carry in the game. It was good to see him back, but I hear the same things you do, that probably going to be tough to get him on the field Saturday night. We talked a lot about the offensive line in the offseason. Did you imagine that they would struggle this mightily early on?
Wait, I got to jump in with something I just thought of. I think I spent all spring on your show making my hot take pick that Trey Bradford would win the starting running back job through spring, and then he transferred a week later. And I've been sitting on that L for like 5 months. Now he's back. What an incredible win that would be if that actually comes this season. I think I would deserve a statue for the greatest take ever.
That is the insight you get right here on the Jordy Culotta Show, man.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew it.
The boomerang starting effect.
He'll come back.
That's right.
Suck at freezing cold takes. I was right all along.
That's exactly right. Brody Miller from The Athletic. Get your subscription today. But why the O-line? I mean, because we talked about this. We knew that they were going to struggle. I did not anticipate them struggling as mightily as they did. I thought Saturday night was very much a concerning piece of film for the front on LSU's offense.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Like you said, we always knew, like, I don't know what's going to happen with the depth. You know, I thought it was going to be an okay line, but they're suddenly playing. And again, 2 games in, I always try to live by the rule that you don't really know what a team is till week 4, all that stuff. But still, I don't think I ever imagined them taking a step back from 2020. Not that they were awful in 2020, but now they are really looking like one of the worst lines in the SEC through 2 games. So yeah, that is a huge red flag. And again, yeah, you can make the argument they were without 3 starters Saturday, but I don't think anybody in that entire building is going to sit here and make that defense, because that means your LSU and your 7th, 8th, and 9th offensive linemen or whatever they were can't block, you know, an FCS team. That's a problem. And I think, you know, I always make the rule that I'm probably not going to be suddenly glowing about anything about LSU after a game against an FCS team. But if things look bad, that's when you actually should be double concerned. So, yeah, I think you really do have to be worried there. The pass protection's the problem. The run game is, I would argue, even more of a problem somehow. And what's tough is, I think one factor in these struggles, quite frankly, is that, yeah, they were banged up all camp, and they didn't ever get time together. It's something we saw in 2018 pretty clearly. Well, they're still banged up, so that's not going to get fixed anytime soon. And the hope, you know, if you wanted to be an optimist, was, hey, these young guys are going to get more time now. You know, maybe they'll step up, but they just flat out didn't look ready Saturday. So it is a troubling situation. And again, they could easily improve in the next few weeks, but right now it's a major concern.
Max's headspace. Where do you gauge him right now, coming out of the first 2 weeks?
You know, I'll go back to I probably mentioned this to you before. I'll go back to a conversation I had with a coach about, you know, like 2 weeks before the season. And this coach was saying, like, hey, I'm high on Max Johnson, but, you know, the offensive line struggles in camp. You're starting to see him get a little, you know, just shaky in the pocket, and that's something he's going to have to work through. And this coach, you know, said, hey, that's something that does get worked out, but it will get worked out eventually, but it's a thing. And I think that coach kind of nailed it on the head, and we saw that exactly happening, you know, week 1 against UCLA. And I wouldn't say we saw as much Saturday, but, you know, we still saw a little bit against McNeese. And it's tough because I think we're in this weird zone with Johnson where I don't think you can – there's no thing in these last 2 games that I would inherently blame on him, maybe other than the brutal interception against UCLA. But it's not like these things fall on him, but he's not overcoming things. And that's kind of a thing where it's not maybe fair to blame him for that, but it is something to watch where you look at that first half against McNeese, I would argue Johnson looked pretty solid. He was making some great throws under pressure, and guys were dropping passes. He was doing some stuff. But then later you did see him one-hop some of those passes. You did see some of those kind of shaky things. So I still am kind of in I'm not down on Johnson. I'm not sold on Johnson. I'm somewhere in the middle of, I think these next 2 games are going to tell us more, but I still think he's a solid quarterback.
To continue the conversation with Max Johnson, it just seems like he's terrified to take any shots down the field because he doesn't want to turn the ball over. I don't know if it's because he doesn't trust his defense exactly, but at some point you're going to have to push the ball down the field. When will that become an impetus on this offense? Because if you look at his numbers, even McNeese, he was 13 of 19 at halftime for 104 yards. I know he threw 2 touchdowns, but those are things that it's just evident you're not stretching the ball down the field, and it makes you very one-dimensional, especially when you can't run the football.
No, I think that's a very valid thing. Because you're right, they have not really attacked down there. When they have, it hasn't exactly worked out. And again, I always try to couch these comments with, I'm not a film guru, so I won't pretend to know if there were openings he wasn't taking. I don't truly know, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right that has to be a little bit of a thing. And it's weird because you look at we had some great advanced analytics we use, and in the UCLA game, it was almost like the problem was, you look at the Florida game in 2020. He was so smart at knowing when to dump it off under pressure, and that's what was a big part of why people were sold by him. He looked like a veteran. And then against UCLA, his depth of target under pressure was actually 4 yards greater, 11-7, which is a massive difference. He was actually trying to do more under pressure, but still, and to get your point, but he wasn't taking shots downfield. He was trying to hit these kind of medium routes under pressure. So that's an answer that doesn't answer your question at all, but I think it's just a weird thing I'm trying to figure out because he's not quite doing the dump-offs that I think they would want him to do and, just be safe under pressure. But he's also not attacking downfield, so he's not exactly checking either box, if that makes sense. And I wonder if that's almost a concerning thing. And last thing I'll say is it is interesting that the literal first thing else you did when Garrett Nussmeier came in was attack downfield 3 out of 4 plays.
He did.
So I do think there's something to what you're asking.
And he put 3 dimes on him.
Just let it rip.
He put 3 on the money. What's your feeling on Wednesday of this game Saturday night? I think a lot of people are kind of speculative of Jim McElwain and his offense. I think when you look at that Missouri game, you see that they played him tight. What's the feel early on here on this matchup coming this weekend versus Central Michigan?
Yeah, I've gotten a real vibe from people in the program that they're like, hey, this is not a game we can overlook, and this is a game you got to worry about. There's actual, kind of concern might not be the right word, but hey, the way we've been playing, this could be a tricky game. I think that's something people should really keep in mind where, yes, they are a well-coached team. Has been the main thing everyone in that building has said to me. They're a team that just kind of knows what they're doing. They don't have any, they're just, every position just seems kind of they know what they're doing. There's no, one standout necessarily. And like you said, in that Missouri game, they ran the ball really well against the SEC defense. And Jacob Sermon, I believe, threw 2 picks, but he also moved the ball. So I don't know exactly how to grade him, but more importantly, they moved the ball, and I think that's going to be tough because LSU's run defense has, through a few games, been maybe one of my main question marks on the team. Where I do buy the pass rush, I actually do. I think that pass rush is fantastic and great at LSU, but that run defense is a different thing, and I think that's going to be a real test for them against Central Michigan this week, heading into SEC play. So I think the spread's 20-ish, and I think if LSU shows up and plays like we thought they would as of August. Yeah, they should cover that, but I don't think anything we've seen the last 2 weeks would make you think they can. So I think Central Michigan makes this, a 1-2 score game.
Brody Miller, he's got an exclusive with Don Jackson, who is the attorney representing John Emery and his family throughout this appeal process and trying to get Emery back on the field. The read is fantastic over at The Athletic. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. You can catch him weekly here on the Jordy Culotta Show, breaking down LSU, whether we're looking back at last weekend or looking ahead to this week or just covering the storylines throughout game week. He does it as good as anybody in the business. Thank you, Brody. As always, we will see you Saturday, buddy.
Thanks as always, guys. Take care.